supply, I'm headed underneath.
I do, but don't worry about it.
All right. Susan? It's okay.
Hello. Welcome to Wednesday meeting, November 29th, Albany Traffic and Safety special meeting. You want to take a roll call?
Commissioner Harry Chomsky.
Present.
Commissioner Robert Del Rosario.
Present.
Commissioner Farid Javandel.
Present.
Commissioner Ken McCroskey.
Present.
Chair Susan Reeves.
Present. So first order of business is approval of minutes for the regular meeting on October 26th, and then secondarily to that, the meeting on November 2nd.
I wanted to make a
comments?
couple of comments about the minutes. First, I just wanted to express my astonishment that you were able to make minutes out of those incredibly complex and lengthy meetings. So excellent work, and they were very readable. And I found two little things to mention in the meeting, the second one about San Pablo. Let me see if I can find them here. Under San Pablo and Castro, it talks about, in two places, it talks about relocating the crosswalk to the east side of the intersection. And I think it means to the north side. The other is on page 4. There's a yellow highlighted phrase with a question mark that looks like you were in the middle of editing something and didn't finish. So I don't think it's that important. It's about a suggestion to locate hawk signal poles downstream of what?
Oh, that's
Crosswalk.
the crosswalk, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was my comment about making sure that they're on the far side of the crosswalk so that if a car is looking, they'll see the pedestrian and the pole will be behind the pedestrian, not the other way around.
So downstream of the crosswalk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
For both the pedestrian and the driver.
So those two were changes to the November 2nd meeting.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
I'll move the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Passes. All right. So both are approved. We are now in the public comment section of the evening. So this is on public comment on anything not contained in the agenda for this evening. Do we have anybody who needs to speak in the public section? No? All right. So we'll move on to the 5-1 police report.
We don't have a police report. We don't have a full month. Sorry that
Oh, that's right. Okay.
because of the timing of this meeting. So we'll catch up at your first meeting in January.
Great. Great. So we're on to 6-1, the request for accessible parking space at 921 Kains Avenue.
Yes, we have received a request from the member of the YMCA, and the YMCA to locate an accessible parking space in front of 921 Kains Avenue. This would be the southernmost marked parking space that is in front of the YMCA property. And in the, that's there. Yeah, they put them.
There's a small one over here.
Okay, just got to get used to it.
It's much lower if you want it.
It'd be like,
Too short for me.
So there is a picture of a proposed location. It's nothing definitive, but this is the area where the closest to the accessible route on Kains, the YMCA. So here, I'm going to put that on the. It's loading right now. So here are a couple of pictures of the location. The parking, as everybody knows, on Kains Avenue is very, very tight, and there is basically almost 100% occupancy there. It's very close to Solano Avenue as well, and we, about 3 or 4 years ago, we implemented some disabled parking on every at every location of every block of Solano Avenue. However, this would be serving the YMCA. It might require relocation of the bicycle rack because this is the area that the door would open. There's also a driveway here on the southern portion of segment of the proposed location, and the accessible route is there's a ramp in between the apartment building and the YMCA building, and also the lift is located in front of this proposed space. And we have Mary Dahlia from the YMCA that she might want to address the commission.
yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Mary Talia, and I'm the Executive Director of the Albany Y. Thank you for having us. I just wanted to say that we have had a request from a member about having a blue curb, an accessible parking space. And we're also very sensitive to our neighbors in the area, and so have a little concern about the impact of the capacity for parking because we are in a mixed-use area. We know that there's a space on every block. So, you know, we have mixed feelings about it, to be honest. We have many people who do use the accessible area. We have a class that's called Sit and Be Fit that has close to 30 people. They come with walkers and canes, and they make their way. You know, I'm not sure one blue curb would really be sufficient, but we're also trying to be sensitive to that, to the needs of people who've requested it, of course. And again, I just want to say we're also sensitive to our neighbors because we really try and be good neighbors. But the other thing that I've observed is that we also have a building adjacent to the Y which has a 60-foot loading zone, which is used by the local businesses, but it is an extended loading zone, I think. So it was something that I thought might be an area for consideration to take a look at that loading zone. Does it need to be as big? I think it's 3 car lengths at this point. Most loading zones I don't think are that long. Just as a compromise to look at other options for that. So that was just something I wanted to point out. And then I think, I don't know about an additional, instead of having it on Kains, would it be better suited to have it on Solano Avenue so that it would serve more of the members of the community? So, and anyway, I just wanted to just, you know, point that out. But we understand this is sensitive around the neighbors and in terms of our impact in that neighborhood. And again, we like to be good neighbors. So if it's not approved, we certainly understand. But anyway, just wanted to say that about the space.
Great.
Okay.
I also wanted to share with you a
Mary, you might
picture-
stay there for a minute.
I also wanted to share with you a picture of the adjacent foam mattress business. There is, the loading zone is 60 feet, and there is a wide driveway that has accessibility to supposedly a loading door that is about maybe 10 feet in width. So that driveway, that's actually, that's something to consider too. I have to say that I have talked to the owner of the foam business, and he is completely opposed to any reduction of the loading space. He says that it's for everybody in the area, and there's no other loading and unloading area from that part of Solano to Masonic. There is one on Masonic on the northwest side of the intersection, combined with a time-limited space, about 20 minutes, I think. So maybe we can put it on the projector right now and just, oh, perfect, yeah. Thank you. So this is the area I was talking about right now. It's being the building is being retrofitted, and it's about 10 feet here. It is supposed to be for loading through this door here, but my understanding is that they're loading through the front, not through this door. That's just information, additional information. Maybe because initially we also were thinking of having the creating an additional parking space here, just to have a more neutral effect on the accessible parking on the neighborhood. But right now it is a driveway. There is a big trailer that comes twice a week to the foam business to deliver mattresses. It's a big trailer. So.
And can you remind us of the handicap on the Solano at that block?
The handicap is on the other end of.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So.
Okay.
It's not really close to the Y, but it's available. There's also another one, I think, right there, yeah.
There, okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
For?
Has there been any outreach regarding the proposal for the handicap space, or have you guys heard, both the Y or staff, from any neighbors?
I haven't heard, but we only received a letter from Amy Mullins this morning,
Yeah.
and I forwarded to you, because when we need to relocate the bicycle-shaped rack, that is something that is well, a little bit sensitive because it's a memorial, and I'm not thinking that we're going to actually look for another location, but within the block, I think we should really look for a location for the bicycle rack. Not eliminating a bicycle rack, but within.
No elimination.
No.
Any other questions? But did you have more?
Yeah, I have a question about, back to the illustration that was in the agenda, about the size of the space and its relation to the driveway. So in the side view on the right, it looks like a pretty short space.
It does.
It is within the T marks.
And that's legal as an ADA?
It is illegal in Albany. I mean,
Thank
we're
you.
trying.
That's
We're
all I'm
trying
asking.
we're trying to use the curb ramp that is on the north side, south side of the intersection to be the accessible ramp. Otherwise, we would have to really impact the parking more because we'll have to
Make a ramp.
get rid of the.
Just one
one on
ask
the
the
north.
question, not looking to stir up a hornet's nest.
And that's what we've been doing on Solano Avenue. We're trying to take advantage of the adjacent driveways.
Yes. Okay. So then I guess the other question is, we've talked about the bike rack, which you can see is the first rack on the left illustration. It's a little hard to see on this. But then looking from the side on the right, it
Yeah,
looks
there's another
like
bike rack
the
there.
second bike rack might also be in the way. So,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. So
We
you're
will
on
have
that.
to readjust everything if this is approved.
And I just want to say, we encourage our members to ride their bikes, and we have oftentimes we have 6 bike racks, and oftentimes they're full.
Yeah, I've seen them full, actually.
So taking those away is a challenge. And one of them is a memorial, the bike rack, to one of our members who was killed in a bike accident. So that's a sensitive one. But we could move it if it needed to be moved.
Okay.
I'm not saying move it to another location. It's in front of
Right,
your
it would have to
business.
stay in front of the Y somehow.
So then I had a question for Mary. As we're looking at things that are changing, do you have an idea of how many people arrive at the Y using like rideshare or on-demand
You mean like
Uber or Lyft or taxis,
Taxis?
or
That's a
even
really good
buses
question.
from residential communities?
I'd say it's a small percentage of people who take rideshare taxis. There definitely are some who do, but it's not a lot.
So those might actually use the loading zone. To pull up.
Rideshare might use the loading zone.
They might.
You
It's an
mean-
easy way to pull to the curb if there's no truck there.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right. Yes.
But you
there
haven't
aren't a lot of
necessarily
them.
seen that.
I haven't seen them. I see them stop in the middle of the street. Actually, so, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a question, we on the other side of the driveway from the yellow zone, as you're headed south down Kains, could we convert that space to a blue curb? So it would leave the yellow zone alone, but instead of impacting the bike rack, if there's no bike rack at the other end of this row of parking spaces.
There are bicycle
Are there?
racks. Are there? Yeah, I think.
Well, I guess would that involve relocating one of the sensitive racks, or is
Right.
that one okay?
We thought about that. Also, the rationale for this location is that the lift is very close to that location. I mean, we can do it, actually. I mean, this is the
Proximity-wise,
proposal.
this is great, but if that rack is a sensitive
Yeah, we can
consideration,
go to the north.
okay,
There's a driveway also.
right.
Any other questions from the commission before we open it up? Any comments from the community for this topic? Please come up, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Commissioners. Brian Parsley, Albany resident. I wasn't actually going to speak on this, but it kind of what Freed was saying. I don't know if you could bring up the Google Maps, and I don't know if it would help, but if you look across the street from where Mr. Dewey's, I don't believe there's a bike rack there.
Yellow.
It's, I think currently 90-minute parking, and I don't know if that's an
Do you mean on Kains?
on Kains.
It appears to be yellow from street view as part of the loading zone.
So then I guess there is 2 loading zones on either side. It looks like on Street View, it is a 90-minute. I just looked at it.
West side,
On the west side, okay.
On the west side. And if if the idea is to, I understand the idea would be obviously to get the disabled space in front of the Y. But if you're looking to get a disabled space as close as you can to the Y without disrupting the bike racks, then that might be an option, since it's already a parking space, to simply move that from being a 90-minute parking space to a disabled space. That's all. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments? No? We'll bring it back to the commission. Who would like to start?
If, or whatever space is used, if it's on Kains, I'd like to make sure it's implemented in a way that would accommodate bidirectional car traffic. Just in case.
Correct?
That's on the left side.
So, looking at Street View, I don't think Solano is going to be an option for us here because the bulb outs don't leave an accessible path of travel between the parking space and the nearest curb ramp. You'd have to go around the bulb out into the traffic lane. So I'm kind of writing off Solano as an option, at least on the south side of the street. As I see it now, if we're going to avoid impacting, the most sensitive bike rack, we're either looking at, as Brian said, the west side of Kains, where it's 90-minute parking on Street View, or doing it just south of the driveway of the foam shop. So for me, I think those seem to be kind of the two leading alternatives, both slightly farther away, admittedly, but if we're going to prioritize not impacting that bike rack, those look like options.
And I think we also want to, I would prefer to, if we have to take a space out of circulation, if you will, for a large number of users and dedicate it to a blue zone, if that space was a 90-minute space to begin with, I think that's a reasonable, maybe a better trade-off rather than taking away one of the all-day residential spots, which are probably in higher demand and under more contention. I don't think anybody's complaining that that it's very difficult to find a 90-minute space to park during the day. I think the parking problem that people have most likely is the residential parking.
You're saying use the 90.
So if we could convert a 90-minute space to a disabled space instead of converting an unlimited space into a disabled space, I think that's an easier call for us to make. I think it's not inconveniencing as many potential other users of the.
Where's the nearest 90-minute space? On the east side?
West side,
It's on the west side?
I believe so.
Across the street.
Across the
Yeah.
street.
And I mean, it may not serve the YMCA as well, but presumably it would serve other businesses in Solano, and as long as it serves the YMCA reasonably well, then I think it's still a good location for a disabled space in the business district.
Is there a handicap spot on Solano in that other direction, on the west side? Looked at the one to the east. Not on that part of the block, so it would get handicap over
So
in the Solano area towards Solano.
So the whole block between San Pablo and Kains doesn't have a disabled space on it?
So it would
No,
serve
because of the curb ramps. There is no curb ramps.
Okay. So if we were to add one on the west side of Kains in front of Mr. Dewey's, it might fill a few different needs.
Mm-hmm.
And it wouldn't be interfering with the number of parking spaces available for residents. And it wouldn't be interfering with the bike rack.
Just to play devil's advocate for a moment, there are no other handicap spaces on Kains either, is that right? So the handicap nature of it could also serve the residents of Kains. And we know proportionally that it's a high density area and there are no other handicap spaces. So it could be of value to the residents. So I'm not sure you can just say
That's true.
that long-term parking is the highest value.
Yeah. I mean, do we have any data or intuitive feeling for how much the disabled spaces along Solano are used? Like, is it hard to get one because they're always full? Or
That's a great question, yeah.
I haven't received any complaints from anybody, except the member of the Y that basically couldn't find parking there.
Okay. So the overall number of blue zones that we have in the neighborhood is appropriate?
It seems
For the
appropriate
demand.
right now.
Okay.
It seems to me that probably the highest use of the blue space is going to be the Y. And therefore, I think having it on the same side of the street as the Y probably makes it the most easily accessible for the users of it. I think maybe there's some ideas about where along the east side of the street it can go, as Fareed was suggesting, so that maybe we don't have to move bike racks, but maybe there's a way to put it right directly in front of where the proposal is, and move the bike rack to a place that's still near its intended space. And then if residential parking is an issue, I mean, can we do like a trickle-down effect and convert a 90-minute space to a residential parking space? I think the last part's not even necessary, but I do feel that I would guess, and maybe the lady from the Y can confirm, that it's going to be pretty well utilized by Y patrons. And I think crossing a street could be a challenge.
You know, actually, I have a solution that I would kick myself later for not just suggesting. So if the space is slightly less long than optimum to make into a handicap space, and we're worried about running into the bike racks, what if you took the next space and made it into a slightly shorter than a full space bike corral, moved all of the bike parking off the sidewalk into the bike corral, freed up that whole space, and had the handicap space with a full amount of space for it?
So removing another
Can you
parking
say
space?
it again, please? So,
I'm saying you put the handicap parking space where it's proposed. You enlarge that space slightly into the next parking space to make it a full ADA compliant handicap space. And you take all of the bike racks off the curb, off the sidewalk, and put them in the next space down that you've just taken a little bit of space away from, and make it into a bike corral. Then you could probably increase the number of bike parking spaces. I realize this may be controversial because it eliminates another parking space. But potentially you could get more people to the Y on bikes with a guaranteed place of finding space for their bike than they would driving.
And we have heard that the bike parking
it's well
at the
used.
Y is heavily used, and it may be heavily enough used that it's dissuading people from trying to bike there.
Well, and it might free up the parking on the street because they're on the bike.
So move the bike racks that we have and add additional bike racks.
As space is available, as racks are available.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the idea of taking away another space, but there are 2 bike racks in front of the foam shop in addition to ours. So I just wanted to say that. And I'm not sure that the handicap blue curb parking is utilized by Y members. I really don't think that's necessarily true for the majority of it. Not sure how many of them have placards. I don't think, I mean, they're coming to work out. You know, most people are. We are also do other things, so it's not just exclusively that. But, so I wouldn't say that the ones that are currently offered are being used by members.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Thank you.
That's good. Thank you.
There's also all the bike racks at Cornell School, which is blocked. It's true. I mean, there are plenty, I feel like there's plenty of bike racks that
Good. Good perspective. Good insight.
Can we go back to the picture of the futon shop loading zone? I didn't totally understand the setup there with that additional, that extra wide driveway.
So part of it's for the driveway and part of it's for a
A loading
not
door that's not being used. So there's a sign in front of that door that says no parking, but is there any practical reason why, if we were to
The idea is
snap
to-
our fingers and turn that into a parking space, would it interfere with the actual day-to-day operations of
Is
the?
it long enough?
The idea is to have the loading through this door.
So the loading zone is supposed to extend, like, why is there a curb cut that's wider than the garage entrance? Is there any reason?
Because it's set up
No.
to receive into that. They might just not be doing it,
So
but
it's set up for like
to receive into that
It's
door.
elevated. They may have once backed up a truck.
backed a
right
truck
there.
Yeah,
up to that.
as you can see
okay.
the height of the,
Yeah.
kind of odd, but.
You know, it's also possible that in part this configuration worked a different way when Kains was two-way. So it used to be the back end of the truck was facing that driveway. Now it's the front end of the truck. The back end of the truck is by the fire hydrant, which is already red curb. So they're never going to have trouble unloading out of the back of the truck, and they'll probably go the curb ramp at the crosswalk and come down the sidewalk, or they can
Yeah.
go down the street. But you know, that means that what we do at the front end here doesn't really impact their operations
Right.
unless we actually shorten the yellow curb.
And if we turn the street back to two-way, our expectation is that at least trucks will still be,
The truck would never be able
Traveling
to come.
southbound.
No.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, the truck would still be traveling southbound
Yeah.
because a big truck wouldn't be able to make a
can't turn
U-turn
around,
here.
right,
And if we have a barrier to prevent entry from the south end of the block,
right.
I don't see this operation changing. So I think we're kind of safe in assuming that the way it works today is how it can continue to operate.
But would that be long enough to create a brand-new parking, general-purpose parking space there, or is it?
It doesn't look like it.
We don't-
We need more from the yellow zone.
we need 10 feet out of the yellow zone instead of 20 if we
Yeah.
kind of stole this 10 feet.
Yeah.
It would be about 10 feet into the yellow zone, yeah.
And would the yellow zone function well at that slightly reduced length?
I talked to Bernie, and he said he would not allow that, would contest the reduction of the yellow zone.
Okay.
But, yeah,
And that the same would apply if we did it the other way and tried to, like, paint the yellow zone 10 feet farther south and take away a parking, and carve out a parking space at the north end next to the fire hydrant. It would have the same amount of impact, just on the opposite end.
one thing that the fire hydrant is about 12 feet at this point, and some other locations we have 7.5 on one side, 7.5 on another, but a little bit longer. We can ask the fire department, but I haven't asked to see if there's a. But even with a slight reduction, it wouldn't give us a full parking space.
But if we were able to combine a slight reduction of the red zone at one end and a lengthening of the yellow zone at the other end to along where that unused driveway is, would that create
Well,
enough
the
space?
idea is to not give him more than what he has right now.
Right, but would that create enough extra space that we could actually add a full parking space in addition to the yellow zone along that
We'll have to
strip?
measure that because that's something that I haven't investigated at this point.
I don't know. I mean, it's piecing together little
Yeah.
bits of what's available and trying to create one parking space. I don't know
That's
if
something
it's
I need to
feasible.
first discuss with the fire department, maybe
Yeah.
meet with them there. And
There's a
the
lot
fact
of
that there is
moving
a bulb out also might facilitate their service to the block. And see if we can have maybe a compact space in front of the driveway,
So
in front of the loading.
following on that concept, in order to just shift the yellow zone down, it's the futon shop's driveway. So if we extend the yellow zone across the driveway, You know, their deliveries can block their own driveway. So we could shorten the red curb here by 5 feet, add another 15 feet of the yellow zone into the blue curb, and then make up that 15-foot reduction by extending the yellow zone into their driveway. The only issue is other deliveries wouldn't be able to use the full yellow zone theoretically because they'd be blocking someone else's driveway. But they're, you know, the futon shop's deliveries could still use that space.
And you said that driveway was used just by the futon shop, or no? It's a driveway for other things.
Yes. But okay, my understanding is that they only have the big rig. They're the only ones with the big trailer. The other deliveries use shorter vehicles.
And I don't think we have enough information on that tonight to make a decision. But as long as we're looking up here, can we look a little bit further to the south? Yeah, so it's an older picture. So if you, I'm looking at the March 2015 Google Street View, and it shows that really faintly under that dumpster, there's a white right angle sticking out along the right side. And there's actually quite a bit of space between the end of that parking place and the driveway. So the painting is different now? Yes. Okay. So it's closer to the driveway? Yes. Okay. Great. I move that we implement the blue space in the proposed location in front of the Y, and that the bike racks be kept as close to the Y as possible while still being moved out of the way of the handicap spot.
I'll second.
I
did.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. It's approved. Thank you, guys. 6.2, speed and volume surveys on the 900 block of Peralta and 500 block of San Carlos.
Yeah, so we conducted 2 speed surveys. I'm going to talk first about Peralta. So Peralta speed survey took place in October, and lasted about a week. So here it is. I'm looking for my little paper. So this is the second time that we are conducting this survey, and the first one took place in May. We presented the results, and it was determined that because of the high volume on the block, being this block is a 950 block of Peralta between Marine and Solano Avenue, and it has a high volume of traffic due to the commerce destination in both Marine and in Solano are trip generators. So the 15%, the resident from the block came and said that the 15% above the speed limit is quite significant for them. So we conducted another speed survey, and you can see the results there, very kind of similar, the results. And the 85th percentile, which is the critical speed, is in the 27th or 28 range. The other thing that was requested at the July meeting was to have the speed survey very close to the Marine intersection, so we conducted 2 surveys at this time. And as you can see, we have the mid-block location and mid-block by direction as well, and the corner location in the corner also by direction. So the corner northbound showed highest 85th percentile speed, almost 29 miles per hour. And this is basically an indication of the turning of the vehicles from Marine onto Peralta going to Solano. It's very fast due to the wide turning radius. So recommendation based on these findings is to reduce the turning radius by cross-hatching the intersection, or like a stripe bulb out instead of like a concrete, a real bulb out. This would be a cross-hatch, maybe to start. And then if I'm not going to say if, but the reduction in speeds will be noticeable, maybe we can implement, if it's approved by this body and the community, we can implement a real bulb out when we include the project in the CIP. Anyway, we'll have to include it in the CIP even if it's striping. The idea is also to have either bollards to deter vehicles from entering to the crosshatch area. And also there is a speed hump recommendation. Any questions at this point? At the last, I didn't include the last report, but at the last report we identified there were like about 3 collisions in the vicinity of this block.
And the speed hump recommendation is where again?
Is where? Usually speed block, in this case, is about 475 feet in length. It could harbor 1 or 2 speed humps, according to our guidance. If it's 1, it would be in the middle. If it's 2, it would be equally separated as much as we can due to the driveway cuts.
Can you describe the bollards?
Well, the bollards are typical bollards, and maybe those would be flexible bollards, plastic.
And how high would they be?
About 2 or 3 feet, 2 or 3 feet.
Okay. When you measure fast northbound traffic and conclude that it's coming from people who made the turn from Marin, is there any way to distinguish that from people who drove straight across Marin during the green phase of the Peralta
Not with this survey. It would be maybe an observational, in addition to this, somebody observing, or.
Do you have any gut feeling about that from what you've seen? Well,
we'll have comments in just a moment.
Not at this point.
Okay.
I don't have.
And when you consider speed humps, should we consider the possibility of installing 1 speed hump but have it south of the midpoint, since more of the speeding is happening in the southern part of the block? If we decided to install 1 speed hump, would it make sense to have it south of the center line?
Towards the south,
instead of right at the middle? In
For
this
some reason, I
case?
think we talked a lot about that. Maybe not.
Okay.
It should be within. Our guidance is the minimum space 100 feet from an intersection.
Minimum.
Okay.
Yeah.
So out of 475, that's 100 feet is very close to the, is very far south along the street. So.
But it would be effective as well.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions before we open it up to comments?
I noticed near Marin Avenue that there's no red curbing. So potentially putting bollards there would eliminate current parking?
We'll have to design the striping to make sure that.
I just think we should make that explicit to the residents who are here so that they understand that.
It would extend onto the street. So if we can maybe put a Google Earth for Peralta and Marine. Would extend onto the street, supposedly in the area that nobody parks.
Well, it's where nobody should park, but Since it's not
Seen some
currently red
people,
curb,
not on Peralta. I've seen some corners parked with.
I can see people parked very close to the crosswalk on
Yeah.
Street View.
Yeah. Right. So, so right now there is red curb on Peralta and, on Marine.
Right.
Would be extending this. This is a very wide turning radius, if you can see. So it would be extending this, the crosshatch around the arrow and around here. Will have to be drawn in AutoCAD with real dimensions to be able to see. I don't really think that it will impact parking much. This area maybe, this area where the arrow is from this pole.
Could those parking
But
spaces?
I don't think people should park there anyways.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
If you
And if we do the
look
other
to
side.
the right, you'll see there's a fire hydrant there too. So if we do any kind of bulb out on the Marin side, that's an area where it's not going to impact parking anyway.
Yeah.
And that'll certainly constrain how much people can flatten out that turn.
I can try to draw something for the next meeting, or just to, and also locate the speed hump. It would be most effective.
So you said something about the CIP would have to be in place for both the marking and for building? Is that how that works?
Yeah, the striping is not going to be expensive.
Okay.
For the speed humps, we have this body has approved speed hump locations that we have not been able to implement because they're not on the CIP, because we don't have budget, and Mark can actually add to that.
So there's actually a couple components to this, and if you recall, we talked about having sort of an understanding of when things would get implemented. So I'm seeing this as like in two pieces. If it is approved, we could do some of the striping work up front fairly quickly. That doesn't involve a lot of, it's essentially maintenance time of lining things out and working that into the time frame. In terms of the speed humps, it's a little more tricky because we do have a backlog of commitments that we haven't implemented. And one of the things that's on a latest list to do is put together a CIP project that will tackle all these commitments that we haven't done. And we're in the process of updating the CIP, not just this thing, but globally across all the city's projects. And that should be going to council early part of next year.
Okay.
And you'd expect to have enough budget to cover the entire backlog of speed bumps and these if we were to add them? Or is it kind of a list and you take the top ones from the list and the later ones get
So I haven't seen the entire list, and I haven't seen the costs associated with that, so I don't know what the funding requirement. We would definitely want to tackle the ones that are out there the longest. So, but the expectation in that structure that we put out was that we would want to incorporate it in a CIP, and this would be the first time of getting some programmatic money to tackle these types of issues. So the first year might be a little slow, but then that would get up, it would move pretty quickly.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions before we open it up to comment? All right. Anyone wanting to comment on this topic? Please come up to the microphone so we can capture your.
With regard to the question about how much of the northbound traffic is coming around the corner from Marin versus coming straight across on Peralta, I'm backing out of my driveway. I'm about 3 houses up on this side. And so I'm looking for the traffic and more than half comes around the corner. Maybe as much as 60%, and those are the harder ones for me to see when I'm trying to back out of the driveway because I can see the people that are coming straight across. But there's a lot, and I'd say it's more than half.
Say your name, please.
Wesley Wooten.
Thank you.
Good evening again, Commissioners. Brian Pursley, Albany resident and resident of Peralta. I'm actually really excited. I appreciate the work that Aleda did for this. I would wholeheartedly encourage you to approve this. Obviously, we've been trying to get a speed hump. I would say, I understand that it doesn't meet the criteria for the 85 percentile. I would say that not every street is the same. We have a very small street, but as you can see from the data that actually the number of cars increased in the fall slightly, a little less than 100, but it's still almost 2,300 cars a day for a very small street, and that's quite a bit. One thing I would want to make sure is that we are the 900 block of Peralta and not the 950 block. The 950 is south of Marin. We're north of Marin, so I would hope if the speed hump would go in, it would go on our side of the block and not the other side. So just want to make sure that gets in there. With regards to the hatching and the bollards, I think that's an excellent idea. Obviously, the best idea would be a bulb out, but obviously, along with the other issues of the CIP, that's going to be down the road. I would say that this is I believe it's a safe route to school. I'm not 100% sure. Quite a few kids do come down Marin and cross Peralta, going to Marin school. That especially in the evening time now, it can become even more dangerous. That corner, I'm not quite sure what the percentage is, but I would guess it's probably somewhere around 60-something% for that turning radius, and it can be pretty scary. Cars do often. Obviously, we're in between Marin and Solano, so we share the street parking with a lot of the merchants and people coming. On a busy day, on a Saturday, they are all the way to the crosswalks on both sides. So it's definitely something to think about, but I hope you approve this and we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a timer here. Okay, good.
3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll be under that. So I'm Mark Priven. I also live on this block. And first of all, I want to thank the city and the commission for taking the time and resources to study this, not just once, but twice. Really appreciate it. We didn't need to study it. Those that live there, we know there are a lot of speeders on our block. We don't have a water cooler, but if we did, this would be the #1 topic of conversation, I can assure you. And so I definitely wholeheartedly support the recommendations. And I don't know how many people are going to get up and speak, but I'm looking at folks, and it's about a third to half of our block is here. So this is a big issue to us. And in particular, just as a matter of policy, speaking beside just our block, I really like the last paragraph that talked about having not just the criteria of the 85th percentile, but also looking at the sheer volume of speeders in a block, because that's what folks who live there care about, is how many cars are speeding down our block, not what percentile. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Justin Martello. I'm sort of in the middle of Peralta on the side, same side as Mark here. But yeah, I mean, I just want to also say that, of course, our family's in support. My daughter Edie is here; she's 6.5. So that's one of my main motivations. Of course, there are a lot of children on our block. Obviously, there's a lot of children in the city, but there's probably 8 kids on the block, so that's why it's one of the most important issues. When we did the survey of our neighbors about the speed hump, 100% of the neighbors were on board, and again, a lot of them are here, but I think we had even more at the last meeting, and more kids. I mean, this is a very, very important issue to all of us. And I agree what Mark just said, and what's in here I appreciate about the volume, because that's exactly the point. If you have 300 plus cars speeding down our road every day in both directions, that's an issue. And, you know, it looks like even, I'd like to see some statistics about how many are actually going even faster than 30 miles per hour, because I can assure you that I see cars every day going, you know, 35, 40 miles per hour down the street. So there's not only people that are going just a little bit above the speed limit, but I'm positive that there's, you know, probably 20, 30 cars or even more that might be going, you know, close to 50% over the speed limit. So there's a real issue with the speed that way too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Orla Lucy. I also live on the street just right next to Brad. Also moved to the neighborhood just about a year ago. So thank you for talking about this and looking at it twice this year. Small children in our house too, so we're very excited about the idea that we're trying to slow down the traffic and maybe even reduce down some of the traffic, because there is a lot. We walk on our street quite a lot. My son goes to daycare not too far away, so we walk back up and down the street, and even crossing the street, there's a lot of people who take those corners on the red light. There's always like a ton of families walking around from the school, and also just people walking around the neighborhood. So I'd love to see the cars being forced to slow down around that neighborhood, because it gets dark there in the evening, especially now in the wintertime. So thank you for thinking about it, and I urge you to put in speed bumps. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you get her name?
Oh. No, but if you can fill out the, there is some
Great.
cards there. Everybody who spoke, please fill out a card.
We're not just collecting information on you, but it does go into the minutes, and we want to spell your name right.
Exactly.
Hi, I'm Wendy Bernstein, and that's my driveway. And pretty much every day when we pull out of the driveway, we just hold our breath because people are coming around that corner so fast. And I think that Wesley made a really good point that at least the people who are coming across Marin, you can see them and they have a light and you can sort of tell when they're going to be coming, when they're not. But the people coming around the corner, you just don't see them at all. I'm really amazed that we haven't actually had a collision. I think we've just really been lucky. This is my son Marty. We have another boy who's 10 at home, and we don't really let them walk around the neighborhood by themselves because of the traffic that we would like to. I also noticed that the other end of the block, that cars coming out of the 7-Eleven parking lot, I see a lot of near misses because of there's people turning from Marin very quickly and people coming out of the parking lot at 7-Eleven, and nobody really knows sort of who has the right of way and who needs to stop. And so I think that's actually an area of concern as well. But thank you very much for working on the issue after all this time.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, take it back to the commission.
So I do want to share one comment on the numbers. Looking at the mid-block speeds in May and October, obviously there's not just the change between what's happening mid-block and at the south end of the block, but the May speeds mid-block were higher than the October speeds mid-block. So if I scale everything up, the 28.9 at the south end of the block headed northbound could have been 29.3 in May. Not that it changes the recommendation, but I think it actually kind of reinforces the numbers to say that they could have actually been higher in the first observation if we had measured those. Mm-hmm. The other kind of commentary on the numbers, the southbound approaching the end of the block, and we discussed this before, so we kind of anticipated it. Some of those people are approaching a red light. So
I think
if it's 25.1 average across everyone, some of those people are going faster. Mm-hmm. So the speeds during the green light are clearly going to be higher than 25.1. So to the extent that we're kind of, pushing the limits of what's meeting the significance criteria, I think this is a very conservative interpretation of what the speeds have been and could be out there. So I think that just supports the recommendation further.
So may I interrupt through the chair? The last paragraph says that you might want to revise the traffic and safety, traffic calming policy. And there are some recommendations, nothing that I mean, you don't have to make a decision right now, but it's something for a future meeting.
Right. Just, a general comment on that. Our threshold of what's significant, what's not significant isn't to say that we're accepting of 85th percentile speeds of 26 or 27 miles an hour. We don't like those either. It's just a question of what do we have resources to do and trying to minimize the backlog that Mark's got to go out there and construct. We kind of are prioritizing. That's what the significance threshold is about. So I think, Leda raises a good point that depending on what capacity we have to deliver, we may very well want to revisit what the threshold is that we apply. But again, it's dependent on what our resources are to actually deliver.
Yeah, you're right. I was more like this block actually is a good example of high volume on residential streets. Yeah. And the 15% that goes above the 85th percentile is significantly more than a more calm street.
Right. So that the view, the metric that we have doesn't necessarily take into account the volume when we're looking at it. So maybe the metric needs to have.
That's why I recommended some between 200 and 250 or something.
Well, I had some thoughts about just as a mathematician.
Yeah, I'm sure you can.
I think it's a great idea to change the way we apply the criteria. And I mean, we've always had a speed criterion and a volume criterion and applied them separately, but it's true they're more meaningful when you think about them together. And I think that's what you're trying to get at in this last paragraph. I think there's an even more sort of mathematically meaningful way of combining them, which is to say the threshold should read something like, if a block has 100 cars a day traveling above 30 miles an hour, then it's in one category. If it has 200 cars a day traveling above 28 miles an hour, then it's in a certain category. That's the kind, rather than saying if the top 15% of the traffic is going 28 miles an hour, and how many people are in that 15%. I think what we really want to know is how many people are speeding, how many people are speeding a lot, how many people are speeding a little. So one way to look at it is how many cars on the block are going faster than 28 miles an hour. Another way to look at it is what is the speed of the 100th fastest car on the block? And is that more or less than 28? And you kind of get to the same threshold either way. They're just different perspectives. But to me, that would be the kind of approach I would want to take to revise the policy. I mean, I think either way, I certainly feel that this block qualifies for the treatments that you've recommended here, and I don't have any hesitation about approving that tonight. But thinking forward and how do we want to streamline the criteria, and as Fareed said, it's not about saying that certain speeding problems are insignificant. It's just that some are more significant than others, and maybe.
So putting us back on topic, I'd like to approve the staff recommendation for the 900 block of Peralta.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. None opposed.
So
can I give my standard speech?
Sure, please
Right.
do.
So there are lots of neighborhoods coming to us for traffic calming, and as you hear from our backlog, this is something we've been actively involved with, and it's good to have you here this evening. I support traffic calming on your block, and I'm going to challenge all of you to support speed calming on everybody else's block by driving that way yourself. Maybe I'm preaching to the choir, but everybody in Albany feels that there are more kids than ever on their block and that people are speeding on their block. So I just challenge you to do your part, and hopefully they will do the same for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
let me also ask about the speed humps. We haven't really discussed whether it should be 1 or 2 speed humps. Is that something that we would discuss at a future meeting? Or?
Yeah, let me something on the computer. I mean, I was very busy. I would have done it, but it's impossible. I didn't have enough time to do this. So for this meeting. So I'm going to draw something and see if just for comments. Also, I want to make sure that the residents know that there's going to be a speed hump in front of some residences, and make sure that they approve it because there's going to be some noise impacts. And yeah, so.
We can't hear you unless you come to the microphone.
I do have
it.
Every resident who signed the petition said they'd be willing to have the speed hump in front of their house, so I don't think you'll have any issues there.
Good to know.
I think I remember the petition.
Would it help you to have a recommendation from us tonight whether to try to design a 1-hump or 2-hump camel for?
Can you say it 1 or 2 depending on driveway cuts?
I'm fine leaving it with Aleda's discretion to figure out what'll work.
Yeah, sometimes it's challenging to have, if you said 2 and to put 2 because there's manholes, there's a lot of stuff.
And the way we just approved it was more open-ended, correct? It gave you, do we have any trouble with giving Aleda?
No, can I put forward an amendment that says we give staff leeway to design a 1 or 2 hump solution, and we don't necessarily need to see the design?
I'll second that.
Well,
you want to see?
No,
discussion.
You want? I was going to bring it.
Yeah, I would like to see it, but although now we have the motion, maybe we should take a vote.
We're talking about the motion. We're talking about the motion. So.
I would like to see it, and also I do feel that the numbers show that we have a concentrated problem in the southern part of the block, and that maybe if we have limited funds for speed humps throughout the city, the way to solve the particular problem on this block is with 1 hump in the southern third.
Yes, I agree, and I can bring it here in January.
Okay.
So should we drop my motion and make another one?
Well, if the original motion is flexible enough that Aleda's going to approach it and give us her best recommendation, I don't think we need further.
And she's gotten the input that we just discussed officially.
Yeah.
Are we okay?
Okay.
All right, so shall we vote on the motion?
I would just dropped it.
Oh, I thought.
We approved the first one to support the staff recommendation.
We voted. I think we voted already. Yeah.
So I think we're good.
All right, so we are clear that we approved the first one with staff's coming back with a recommendation. Okay. Good. All right. Moving on to 6.2 speed and,
San Carlos.
San Carlos.
Yeah, okay, speed and volume surveys on the 900 block of Peralta and 500 block of San Carlos.
With San Carlos, we also conducted a speed survey in October. The data shows that there is an 85th percentile of 22.8 during the total length of the survey. We also disaggregated the data by just collecting weekend, which shows a little bit of higher 85th percentile at 23 miles per hour. And on a typical weekday, Tuesday, only 22.4 miles per hour. So I have to say that on both locations, the street sweeper destroyed the tubes, but I was able to, get the data that it was reliable. So I didn't use the last part of it because it was a bunch of zeros also. And so this is what we record what we recorded, and this is basically the results of the survey. I didn't find any collisions from 2014 to 16 along this block. Mr. John Jabowski is here, and we've been communicating with him regarding this speed survey. There is concerns also about speeding there, and people practically from Domino's Pizza, I think. I wasn't going to say that. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've heard also from other locations as well. So usually young drivers as well, you know. So in order to confirm this, or maybe not confirm these results, I offer Mr. Jaworski to go to the block and collect data using the radar gun for about 30 minutes on a peak, or maybe at 10 a.m., you know, when there's not many cars. Basically, it should be a conversation between the two of us and just say when do you observe the fastest speed on your blocks? Is it throughout the day or a particular time of the day, maybe at noon when there's more deliveries, or when?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
We'll call you.
I'm sorry, Elliot. So you were asking, it's pretty much throughout the day? It's
throughout the day,
concern.
okay,
Yeah.
And also, I have to say that I've been in communication with the city of El Cerrito. There's another resident, because this block, it's 1/3 is in El Cerrito, 2/3 is in Albany. They have approached El Cerrito Public Works, and I share these results with the city engineer in El Cerrito.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there are 3 residents also working from the El Cerrito side to try to get them engaged. However, their concerns are if the commission finds that there's not a problem, that El Cerrito is just going to simply fall in line and not make any effort at all, to be quite frank. I actually have the distinct honor of being the last house in Albany, and we're a little bit short-handed because we're only 4 houses on either side. That being said, everyone did sign the petition, and everyone knows that there's a problem. And the reason I'm here is because when Alita actually told me what had happened, regardless of the street sweepers, when I parlayed that back to the block, they were literally flabbergasted. They could not believe that the data didn't support our efforts. So I just wanted to make sure that the communications were still open, that we left all our options open. We're willing to do anything you guys recommend to get something on the block, because there are 3 dogs that have been hit this year, and to hit a dog is pretty hard. And I think that Harry and Farid actually just hit the nail. I'm not really deep into the metrics, and I don't know how they're calculated. All I know is my real-life experience on that block. I moved from Oakland, and these cars are literally pushing 40. And there's a slight incline when you come into Albany from El Cerrito, and these cars literally rock coming over that incline, and it's not significant. So I watch this all the day. Another concern that I have is, I'm being timed, is that people are starting to be a little bit more proactive about it. They're putting like rocks in the streets. I'm taking them out myself, and it's common knowledge that this is, I mean, people are screaming at people on the streets to slow down, and I'm worried that somebody's really gonna get hurt. I have 2 little daughters, a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. I'm a single dad. I can't, you know, like be with them all the time. I really want them to be able to walk down the street. But it's a commonly accepted lore on the block that it is a speed tunnel for Domino's. I have dozens of calls into them to slow down with no effect at all. I will tell you that a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old came up to me tonight because they knew I was coming here, and they said, oh, the guys in Domino's, they saw the strips down there. They've been driving slower than they have all year. Somehow they knew about it, and that actually jolted all the numbers. But yeah, so all that said, you know, I hope we can move forward to this. Maybe it's a reassessment. There are 8 little kids on our block. And you know, as he said, you know, everybody's got little kids and everybody's driving faster, but these 2 are mine. So that's why I'm here.
Right, so I would like to do the radar gun survey.
Alita, what does that entail? I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Well, what it means is that it's basically not as visible as the tubes. Mm-hmm. So it works. We connect the gun with the car battery, and it is. Have you seen a police officer conducting radar speed humps? Or
not up close, no.
they usually have it. You point to the car that is approaching or the car that is departing, and immediately tells you the speed.
Mm-hmm. And so then this is manually controlled?
And it records it.
Like the movies.
I've done this on my block. And
Yeah.
it's an instant reporting. There's no recording of it. if I
No,
understand.
but we,
Right, Doc?
there is a form that we have to fill out with the speed, and then that's how we estimate the 85th percentile. So I have that.
So you do it and then manually you
Yeah.
capture what it says. Okay.
So
And would that be me, or would that
No,
be?
no, no,
the
I'll do it.
representative?
I'll do it, and you can be in my car. Maybe you can be
see.
recording, or you can be pointing, and I'll record.
So I borrowed a speed gun once, and I found that my perception on my particular block, the 800 block of Santa Fe, was that people were going quite fast, and it turned out they were going between 25 and 30. But I was also able to take the survey myself for my own information from behind a car. So people didn't know I was there. So it's a little different situation.
Okay, and you were mentioning that it was like half an hour increments?
We can actually measure 30 minutes, and it will tell us if this will validate this or
Fact
not.
checking, yeah.
I mean,
I mean, the tubes are out there 24 hours a day, but for someone as staff to sit there and do it, getting a half-hour snapshot's usually sufficient.
No, I totally understand, and it's also an issue of resource. I would go back to your point earlier about the metrics. I mean, for me, if the average is 26.5, and you've got 10 people going 48 miles an hour down that street, that's too much for me to feel safe with my little girls. So I don't know. How do you guys? I mean, how do you rectify?
Well, if you have 10 people a day, then that means it's about one person per hour. So it's
Just
unfortunate, but yeah.
Aleda, can you tell us what the highest speeds recorded were?
I gave you that information. I gave you the report. I think it's
Okay.
36, isn't it? Did you remember the fastest speed on your block?
I haven't even been able to take a look at the
Oh, you didn't look
data
at
yet.
it?
Yeah, that's why I'm totally.
I think it's in the
unarmed.
30s. It is in the high 30s. I think it's 36 or 38. I don't remember.
Okay.
It's some of them are scary. I mean, I almost got run over yesterday. I literally yelled at this guy that came in this blue Beamer and just literally ran me off the road.
Well, the truth is, 15 miles an hour may be too fast if there are people on the street or getting in and out of cars. So it's not about the absolute speed, it's about the appropriate speed.
Okay.
Sure. And then it's about what we can enforce and what we have the means to affect.
Yeah, so what do you guys suggest since I'm on this cusp of El Cerrito? I mean, how do we work with them in conjunction, or are we doing this in tandem and react to each other, or how does that work?
I am working with the Public
You are?
Works
Okay.
Director here at this point.
Okay. Oh, one thing that I didn't mention, part of the problem is sort of inherited because where I live, which is right on the creek, there is not a stop sign for 3 blocks going into El Cerrito. That's why the Domino's guys use it, because they come in from El Cerrito and they don't have a stop sign for 3 long blocks. So by the time they get to our house, they're pushing. That's why I'm also surprised over the data.
So I have a solution for you, for a flippant solution for you for El Cerrito. Wait till we close the blocks north of Brighton into the plaza, and then suggest that they close your block mid-block at the city line in retaliation.
I didn't get your phone number.
We'll talk later. Stick around for the food.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you guys. And Alida, we'll be talking.
Yeah, we can coordinate when to do this.
Okay.
Okay.
And you'll forgive me if I don't stay for the remainder and the cheese. I've got my 2 little girls and a babysitter are waiting. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. So back to us for any other conversation.
Yeah, sounds like there's a
We have
plan.
We're all in agreement?
Yeah.
Do you need anything else from us, Aleda?
No.
Okay. Good. Moving on to 6.3, review of revised plans for proposed park and ride under I-80 Buchanan Street intersection.
I included in your packet the civil plans for the park and ride, Buchanan Park and Ride. I did receive later an exhibit that we use for a meeting that we had for maintenance purposes with MTC and Caltrans. And also, I put at your places a more, I'm sorry, it's a black and white, but a more in detail or better.
We got the color one here.
Yeah, you have the color that I'm gonna,
Oh,
and
that.
both of them, yeah.
Can you,
We're good.
it was there because I had to,
Have the color one.
I can deal with the,
you can deal with that?
yeah. Thanks.
Which one is this? Okay. Okay. Oh. So here it is. This is a. I didn't have an electronic copy of the black and white, which is more visible. But going with that, we received this last layout, and with the improvements that they're planning. We also submitted some comments that had to do with drainage and with the possibility of implementing a short cycle track, because this is, as you can see, these are crosswalks, basically just indicating crossings for pedestrians. One of the comments that we submitted is to see if they can create a short cycle track to access the bike lockers that are situated here. And the other request is to work, to explore, because they said no before, but just trying to push it forward, is some kind of illumination to access, for this multi-use trail, in order to be able to access the facility. Also, we said we need maybe some path connecting the two here. The other thing that we requested is to have a leading pedestrian interval at the signal here. And that's something that I have to really see. There was a memorandum that I have to still provide comments on.
I'm sorry, which
about the
section?
signal.
I wasn't looking at the screen. Where were you going to put the pedestrian leadoff?
Pedestrian what?
The pedestrian leadoff was going to be on which leg?
On the at the signal for the crossing here and also here.
Okay, great.
I mean, both, the three of them, actually. Yeah. That's the request. What else? What else? So, in terms of improvements, as you can see, there's going to be a bus queue jump lane, and AC Transit is going to be stopping at the western end of this block, and it was going to have a preferential treatment at the signal by the intersection of the off-ramp at 580. Also, it's going to be some changes at the meter on the westbound on-ramp. The metering lights, we're going to have some special treatment for AC Transit buses.
So the bus will be in the HOV? And then
Yes.
it'll trigger the signal?
Mm-hmm. What else? In terms of internal circulation,
can I ask?
Yeah.
Does it trigger the signal when the bus arrives at the last position, or does it trigger to clear out the chute?
You can, it depends on the technology, but you can set it either way, so you can get it right up to the very front. Or if it's clear and you want to have it, 100 feet in advance, you can do that too.
Okay, great, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
So there is this bus, in the plan there is a bus loading zone, but it's basically the commuter shuttle stop. That's the area that has the turnout, is the commuter shuttle stop. So
Commuter shuttle stop.
that's something like a Chariot. I don't know if they have Chariot, but some companies in Silicon Valley, they do have their buses too.
Private shuttle.
Okay.
Private shuttles. Yeah. MTC is basically there's a initiative to fund those service providers because they eliminate cars on the freeway. So it's a positive outcome. Other than that, I think that's mainly the comments we sent. What else? Maybe showing the electric vehicle stalls that will be implemented here. And I also mentioned something about the actual number of these accessible parking spaces based on the fact that it's every 25 general, parking stalls, there must be one. I think they're short by about 2. That's, yeah. So if there are any other comments that you would like to add, that would be great.
Can you remind me why that AC Transit's the further one? There is a reason. I know that.
There is, yeah. So the private shuttles presumably make longer stops, so they don't have an issue with being what they call a duck out, getting out of the lane of traffic.
Okay.
Whereas AC Transit's a faster boarding process, and so for us to get back into the lane of traffic causes us more delay. So more than likely, this is like a point-to-point type of shuttle for the private company, so they have more time to deal with, and us, we don't have that luxury.
Can you explain the queue jump, one of you?
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. The bus is pulling up at the right side, and we were trying to find the safest place to put the bus stop. And then
this is for buses stopping at the western of the 2 bus zones.
What was it? There you go. So the bus stop for AC Transit is right here.
Right.
And the vehicle is in the right lane, so it's impossible to get over to the left lane and then make the turn. So a queue jump would allow the bus to pull back in here, get a dedicated signal to have the bus make the left turn first in front of the vehicles to the left of it. So it's possible to make a left turn from the right lane.
Which is shown on the black and white version.
Okay.
Better.
It's basically just a separate signal phase so that they can turn left in front of where the through traffic would be going.
Okay.
Elated, do you know if the light blue and the color drawing, that drawing, is that hardscape that that the project is proposing to put in?
I think the light blue areas are showing maintenance responsibilities. That was the whole focus of this this figure. So
yeah, I use that one because if it's
found out we're responsible for a lot.
I use it because it's color and it's and I didn't have a color copy of this. I have it somewhere and I didn't.
What are we responsible for? I thought the light blue they were.
The light blue areas.
So the area within the green fence, the green.
Here.
The green area
that shade
is
of blue, but this other shade of blue is us? Is that what?
all the sidewalks.
All the sidewalks are,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
All of these.
Including going down to the bus drop off.
And the striping as well.
And that's going to get relinquished from Caltrans?
It's according to our agreement.
We're trying to sift through those agreements right now and figure out. I think we were all looking at different agreements, but we're trying to sort that out. But the working, or what was discussed in the meeting this week, was the sidewalks on Buchanan would be the city, and as well as the sidewalk going out to the bus drop off on the off ramp.
The maintenance or the installation? Or?
Maintenance.
Maintenance.
Okay.
And ownership and liability, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Whoa.
I don't know about the ownership. Caltrans is going to want to maintain within their right-of-way everything at the ramp terminus intersections.
And
They're going to want to dump the maintenance responsibility on
Right,
us.
right, and because everything below the freeway structure is Caltrans too. They're not going to give that to you.
Basically, if we look at this
The city.
picture and you look at the eastbound off-ramp and watch where the curb returns go, as far as the curb return goes before the street straightens out on the edge, that's how far Caltrans is going to want their right-of-way to extend, to the end of the curb return.
Right, yeah.
So I think from the east end of the curb return, the eastbound ramps to basically the west side of this intersection at the bottom that's just off the screen, they're going to want total ownership of that.
Mm-hmm.
But they're still going to ask us to maintain all the pathways within it. That's what it sounds like.
So one of the issues we're dealing with is the maintenance agreement that we have for this area was first drawn up in 1960 and hasn't been upgraded to reflect this. And even that, the maintenance agreement we were looking at was done in 81 that didn't address this at all. So part of this is starting at a common point of, before this project, who's responsible for what? And then we can do the overlay of this project.
What about it would be the paths underneath the freeway on the north side? Are those currently City of Albany responsibility?
Yes.
Ah, okay. And that was an agreement set with Caltrans?
That was an agreement that was sent over, yes, and that was done in 2007.
Okay.
I think the agreement was signed in.
Oh, 4, okay.
It was sent over today, and I took a quick skim through it, but yes, that's our
Probably 4,
responsibility.
yeah.
Okay.
We have also, we look at the agreement again in 2007 when we did the alternate path, the second yellow to the, towards north, basically, the second yellow path.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
So I spent some time at the Ashby station one morning and watched private buses pulling up and actually people getting dropped off to catch the private buses from Lyft and Uber. So in general, if either I'm a person who's riding Lyft to catch my shuttle, or if maybe I'm riding Lyft because I missed the last bus and I want to get back to my parked car, where are the spaces where I could be dropped off by a private vehicle?
I'm assuming you're inside the lot.
Yeah, inside the lot.
Well, so if I'm coming from the hills, I'm not going to instruct the Uber driver to drive all the way in the lot so that I have to walk back to the bus.
Right.
I mean, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not.
And if there's a bus there, does that mean there's no space to pull up?
I wonder if you could make the dugout for the shuttle longer to incorporate that.
I'm not wanting to get into the details. I just want to raise the issue for staff.
I thought that in previous meetings with MTC, that's what they said, they're going to use that cutout for shuttles and for a drop-off area.
It is pretty long, right?
So if you designate the back end of it as a white zone and the front end of it as
Yeah.
a red curb for the shuttle buses or whatever,
Yeah.
some such configuration.
So that's great for westbound or sort of outgoing.
Right.
And then we're suggesting that the Uber would just drive you to your car within the lot in the evening if you were coming back that way.
Sure.
Okay.
And does the city or do jurisdictions paint red curb for private shuttles, or do you keep them white?
It may be white.
Because then maybe that's just a general drop-off then, right, for that section that can be.
You might
type of
still
vehicle.
sort of designate it, this end for shuttle buses, this end for passenger cars.
Yeah.
Just to avoid blocking out the shuttle when it arrives.
Right.
Just a point here, I pulled up the agreement, particularly for the bike lanes, the bike paths. So it is 2006, not 2004, and Caltrans pushes all maintenance and liability responsibility to the city.
All right.
I heard Aleda say something about bike lockers and a cycle track, and I didn't follow it all. So can I just ask you to repeat that?
Well, the comment we sent, I have to say, is not. So it's to create, there is, I think, this is an area, a concrete area here by the, and I'm just going to go here. Let's see. Okay. Oh, yeah. See, this is where my cursor is moving. This is the area where the bike lockers are.
I don't
So I was
see your
thinking-
cursor.
It's hard to.
The left edge of the parking lot.
Yeah. So I was thinking of, see,
There.
what happens is that there's no visions for bicycles. If you have your bicycle here, you will have to dismount, cross here, and then continue in either of these.
Right, so you'd have to use 2 pedestrian crosswalks
Yeah.
to get to where our existing bike
Right, so
facilities are.
what we sent is that maybe create a bicycle or a multi-use trail here or a cycle track, and then facilitate the crossing with the bicycle markings across these crosswalks, and at least between these and these two, and just try to improve, or to include bicycle facility, even though it's very, very small here.
And I think there's an argument that the crosswalk across the on-ramp is already legally connecting to bike paths and is a bike crossing. But you could clarify it with markings. I think that's fine to add extra markings for a bike crossing. But then, crossing Buchanan needs some kind of designation with a separate bike crossing if we want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And do we really need a cycle track, though? I mean, it seems like once you've crossed that, then you're basically entering through there's a pedestrian access to the parking lot there, right?
Yeah.
So
this is, fence.
Right, but isn't there a gap in the fence for people to walk in and out? Isn't that where people normally walk in and out of the facility?
Or maybe making it wider. I was thinking of allowing bicycles to go there.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like bikes should be able to follow the same path that pedestrians are following between the crosswalks and the interior of the parking lot.
Where is the gap in the fence?
Right in the
It's not
corner.
really
It
visible,
would have to be where the sidewalk kind of takes that 90-degree bend and goes in. Yeah.
It's showing solid, I mean, I guess.
I'm pointing at it, Susan.
Oh, sorry.
Should be right here, hopefully.
Well, I've used the Emeryville crossing on the sidewalk and on the street. The street is really crazy if you're on a bicycle. So the other day I used the sidewalk, which is narrow, and supposedly I could get a ticket there. So I'm just trying to legalize something that I mean, if it's a multi-use, I mean, it seems that they have a space there. They should be able to widen everything and make it maybe either a multi-use trail or a separated.
If you can make it 10 feet wide and declare it to be a multi-use trail, then I think you've solved the crosswalk problem as well.
Mm-hmm. And then here, maybe have green, markings for bicycle here too. And this is where we requested the leading pedestrian interval because this is crazy, so.
Yeah. And there's already some special sign there that says PEDS in X Walk, right?
It does that.
Does that not work anymore?
It does work, but I don't know if people see it.
Yeah.
It's very hard to see, actually. It's not a very visible one.
It's a strange sign. I've never seen
It's a
one
strange
like it
sign,
anywhere else.
It's a strange one. And that's the reason we did the alternate path. And I think, so we're requesting lights there also, but most likely it's not going to happen. But at least it's a documentation. So if you have any more comments, please send them to me by this Friday, if you don't mind.
So has anything changed in their funding? 'Cause
I don't know. Right now, they receive an administrative review of 65% plans. That's my understanding. This week, they said, is that right? This week, they're going to receive 65% plans. So the faster we submit these comments, maybe it's already too late, but at least they have it. We're really happy to have this, this park and ride lot.
Yes.
But,
and it looks like they've also taken comments about the fence height into consideration, and that's great.
Yeah.
So it's a tall, curved fence.
Yeah, curved fence, yeah.
Yeah. And I have to say, from my standpoint, I would like people to avoid crossing on that eastbound 80 on-ramp, if at all possible. And when the project gets implemented, I'd like us to recheck the signage to make sure it's very clear that there are 2 ways to go, and that one way does not involve crossing that particular ramp.
That is, yeah. Actually, we can actually work with them on the signage.
Well, I think there's some signage here. on Albany property, I assume, or Albany responsible property.
There's alternate path beneath freeway on-ramp,
Yeah, and we could increase that verbiage to include alternate route to the park and ride lot.
But the route to the park and ride lot, if you go under, then
it's circuitous.
It's like,
I agree.
Well, also, we're requesting a connecting path here.
Yeah, maybe you can cut across.
We are requesting a connecting path in between the two.
Oh,
That would be
ramp,
great.
A sloped path, yeah.
Definitely request that.
I'm requesting some lights and maybe not, but also at this time of the year, who's going to use that if it's dark? With a flashlight, maybe.
I see.
I just have to imagine that most people will use the crosswalk, even if we don't consider it safe. It's right there. You're looking at it. It's going to be hard to.
This crosswalk, you mean?
Yeah.
I agree. The desire line is straight across, but,
Yeah, but
I would like to make it as clear as possible that there is an alternative.
Okay.
But it's kind of, it doesn't seem safe at this point. Maybe with this improvement, it's going to feel differently, but it doesn't really feel safe, especially with this fast turning. Again, this is the same.
Yes.
This is a
Can
very
we put
fast
crosshatch and bollards there?
There already are.
do have it, but there's
already are.
crosshatch and ballers, and it's also downhill.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you have to think that maybe with all this more activity in the area, it might slow it down.
That's what I'm saying. So
We can only hope that the private buses back up across the
Yeah.
entrance and delay the traffic. Yes.
that's why I'm kind of
I'm just more like for the AC transit stop there, without having more buses. It's gonna.
Depending on
Nobody's gonna be able to get on when they get to that stop.
We have a solution.
Oh, good. What is that?
There are two routes that come from Richmond, and one is very full, the L bus, and one is only half full, the LA. So we're going to try and have them swap streets so that they can balance the load a little bit.
Oh, I see.
So the half-empty bus
I'm an L rider, by the way.
So I think you will, in the proposal that AC Transit has, you would then become an LA rider because that bus comes half empty, it'll get off the freeway and then hop on somewhere mid-route where the L, like I think at Cutting, and it'll take over the L. Then the L will hop on the freeway. So more capacity.
That'd be wonderful. I'd love it. Good. So any other discussion on the park and ride? Any other thing that you need from us?
No, if you have comments, please send them to me, and that's it. Or if you have comments, just tell me right now.
Any other comments to tell her right now?
I think I've done it.
I think you have
Already made them.
the right things on the list from my point of view. All right. Moving to 7.1 announcement on update on sidewalk shaving program to address minor sidewalk uplifts in Albany.
So this is a small contract that we have going out to just do some sidewalk shaving at about 25 locations around Solano and some other areas to look at, to try to deal with some of the smaller uplifts, so things that are, 2 inches and less that can be done by shaving. So this is a contract that we're funding out of general fund money, not sidewalk tax money, to just get out and get some of these things taken care of. And it's starting next week and should be done pretty quickly.
Great.
And that's just narrowing down the whole list a little bit.
Yeah, so in some ways, these are ones that are sort of lower on the criteria, and so there's still issues, and there's still issues in high traffic areas. So we're just getting out there and getting as many of them done as we can.
Good.
What were the criteria for the locations?
Really, we just had the contractor survey up and down Solano and pick up everything that was 2 inches and less that they could do and meet our funding requirements.
Cool.
So this is just on Solano Ave itself?
No, there are some other locations in the city, but mostly on Solano
But
Avenue.
there are places that you already knew about, like you didn't try to do a survey to get complete data the way we talked about for the major sidewalk program?
A little of both. So it was primarily driven by a couple of key areas that were brought to our attention as problems. And then as we got out there, we say, well, we can afford a dollar amount of whatever, so let's maximize what we can do in these areas.
Great. Any other questions? Good. Future agenda items. You want to, transportation and street parking elements of Albany Unified School District San Gabriel Campus Project, North Albany Traffic Calming, Albany Sidewalk Program, and Albany Pavement Program. Is there anything else we need to add to this list?
The Peralta striping, the speed hump and striping, yeah.
Okay.
Is there a work plan that comes forward, or is that only every other year? Is there a staff work plan?
That's every other year.
Okay.
Might it make sense to look at that in the new year?
Probably would. We can put it on your agenda just to refresh all of
Yeah.
our memory about what
that's good.
Should be doing.
And would that, the other thing is, do we need to look again at the backlog of things that haven't, would we have a chance to look at that? Should we?
If you want, but I...
Not really. Okay.
I just want to do them.
Okay. I'd like that too.
That's better.
But it sounds like there's constraint on whether you can do them all.
Well, so we're putting it in a single project, and then we'll tackle it. I don't, some of that will be dictated in the CIP that'll be available, so I'm not sure if we need to, eventually we're going to do all of them. It's just a matter of time, and I think I'm hedging a little bit because I don't know what the dollar amount is and what the dollar amount would be. It's sort of this budget Tetris you do to try to make it all fit. And we're going to try to do as much as we can. And, ideally we, clear our backlog, and then we can set up some programmatic funding to make sure that we keep up on these and don't create a backlog.
Okay.
Do we want to agendize at some point looking at the traffic calming criteria for volume?
For volume?
That's what came up.
Treating speed and volume
Yeah.
together.
Yes.
So maybe that's not a January thing, but
I think we do have interest in adding some dimension to that. So if we can add that. Great.
I have to say, Mark has asked me for the backlog, and I have failed to give the list to him. It's my fault.
They're due Friday.
Okay. Oh, no.
don't worry, it's Wednesday, it's not Thursday.
As all the CIP projects are due Friday.
Oh, dear.
All right.
I should have mentioned during announcements and
Oh, yeah.
communications, but
Didn't
correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that ACTC is coming to City Council on December 4th.
Thank you for raising that because that is not the schedule now.
Ah, okay.
On December 4th, of interest to the commission will be the Kains and Adams report
Oh.
you acted on at your last meeting. So that's an important agenda item and will be, as you experienced, will be a substantive issue for the council. We are working on a weekly basis. Aleda and I are working on a weekly basis with Alameda County Transportation Commission staff. Preston has been participating in many of the meetings as well. The project is, the Gilman project is being divided into two separate projects, and Fareed in his professional capacity is there too, I should mention. And we're tentatively planning to come to the city council in January. The city council's schedule is getting wiggled around a little bit in January because of the holiday, so I think it's January 22nd is the date that's been discussed. That's still tentative, but that's the target date that we discussed earlier today of, and in advance of that, having some community meetings particularly with some of the businesses along East Shore that would be affected by the roadway design. And then the bicycle and pedestrian crossings will be a separate project on its own timeline. And since this isn't on your agenda, we probably shouldn't go in long and deep into it, but when it gets a little further advanced, probably in January, we might be in a place where we can give you a more complete briefing. Right now, it's really, there's a lot going on at the commission and city staff levels, so we're not quite ready to show it for as a. It's not at a milestone where it's kind of we're ready for feedback yet.
There's the alternatives evaluated.
Yeah, every week there's a new alternatives get added and dropped and moved around, and the numbers change, and it's in its creative process right now.
It's a big project.
It is. It is. Thank you for mentioning that. I'm sorry I didn't mention that earlier in the announcements as well.
Any other announcements that you might have moved over?
Well, just for clarification, is there any issue with more than 3 of us showing up at the city council meeting?
No.
Great.
Because it's a public meeting, or?
It's a public meeting, and
We've already discussed it.
You've already discussed it, so it's not an item before. I'll double check with the city clerk, and if we had to, we could notice it as a Traffic and Safety Commission meeting. But I'm not remembering the wording of the Brown Act completely, but I believe you all can participate as individuals, or the chair can participate representing the commission, because the action is on the project is on the agenda, is on a public agenda. But I'll double check and get back to everyone.
And we've already taken our action.
Right, we've taken our action.
Right.
Thank you for checking.
Great. Anything else before we wrap up?
Thank you for the panettone. Is this you, Aleda? Is it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just saying thank you for your service and leadership.
Thank you. Yeah. I can speak for myself, and I think for the commission, that we feel very fortunate to have support of staff, and the caliber that you guys help us assist us with is wonderful. So,
Hear, hear.
thank you. So I will adjourn the meeting at 9, whatever it is. No, 8. Yeah, no.
8:53.
8. Wow, it's unbelievable. It's
8:54.
8.
Oh my gosh.
How can that be?
What did we do wrong?
Almost 8:55.
The percentile speed versus the volume.
And I have something that's